Welcome to The Road to Zero, a future-proof podcast, as we explore the changing nature of our economy as we look for prosperity and opportunity in not only preserving, but also improving our environment. Today on The Road to Zero, we're talking to Siddha Mahajan of Anova Energy, based in Edmonton, Alberta. Welcome, Siddha. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for having me here.
All right. So tell us a little bit, before we get into what work you do at Anova and what Anova does, I'd just like to hear how you got into what I like to call the carbon economy, really dealing with reducing emissions for companies and really making a difference, I guess, in the big goals we all have. So tell me a bit how you ended up here.
Yeah, sure. I would say it just came very organically to me. And I started off as a botany honors, and it just had a component of clean energy and renewable energy, where biofuels become part of plants and how plants have a role to play as an energy sources. And that just started the interest in the subject. Eventually, I took natural resources management and did my majors in energy. It was very organically that I started picking all those subjects that were in and around energy subject. And once I went into that, I think it was just purely, probably I have to give credit to my professors and the people I got an opportunity to work with who were self-driven as well, and gave me an opportunity to learn more about this. And I'm glad that I'm part of this now, especially because this is the need of our, and there's no way to go back to fossil fuels 100%. So yes, I'm happy that I'm in this field, and to be able to contribute in any way is something that I really enjoy.
And tell us a bit of the work that you do specifically at Anova. What's the goal of Anova, and what kind of projects do you guys take on?
Yeah, so we are essentially an energy a consultancy and the brokerage firm. We help clients across Canada, especially in the deregulated markets in the space of retail, commercial energy, that's electricity and natural gas. But via our long-term relationships with clients and how we are helping them to manage their energy accounts, we've been very frequently in recent years, we've been getting a question from them that how do they go green in terms of energy consumption, or how do they make an energy buying decision that makes their businesses more sustainable. So that was a question that came to us, and our journey in terms of providing solutions in this carbon offset and green energy space started. This is essentially one of the big things that we are doing right now, helping companies, regardless of what sector they belong to, be it oil and gas, retail, real estate, or any size. We help them to identify their areas where they want to go clean. Energy has always been the major source of pollution or carbon emissions, and we help them offset their emissions at a reasonable price point as a brokerage firm.
Okay, and that's a really interesting subject, that whole piece of the offset. Can you let us know, how does that work in Canada, these offset, like where do you get them, and what is the I guess regulatory structure here in Canada?
This basically has its very strong footing in Greenhouse Gas Emissions Act that government had taken out. If I'm not sure, it was, I think, 2017. But Paris Agreement was really a point, a time in across the world, whoever took part in COP, to have some serious commitments and lay down some strict regulations and action plan. And that's what Canada, being very serious about that, did the same thing here. It started off having with carbon tax that we all pay for the consumption of natural gas. And alongside, there is also output-based performance system, OBPS, which basically taxes you for any emissions that's in addition to natural gas consumption. So this is at federal level, but many provinces such as I think it is British Columbia and Alberta including, which already had a carbon regulation in place, but they have just recently, in recent years, evolved it and framed it around the federal system, just so that they can align and be inconsistent with the federal regulations.
Okay, so we have like I said, the carbon tax we all know, charged at the pump, charged for natural gas usage, and this other piece where a company's emission is calculated or measured, and they actually pay a surtax on that based on how much carbon they emit.
Yes, and another thing is that there are some companies which are not emitting that much, but they still want to, if they wish to go green, either via compliance or as an environmental stewardship, they always have an option to still go green and buy these carbon offsets. Province like Alberta has its own carbon registry, from where they can either buy verified and certified offsets and opt in for the regulation that's available here, or they can otherwise also buy these carbon offsets and make them as part of their ESG counting or corporate social responsibility.
So basically, based on those emissions, you either pay for the amount, like the amount for the carbon, or you can buy some offsets, or you can invest. I think you can also invest in some kind of fund as well as like a fund that's paying to develop technologies. Like there's a couple of places you can go to just giving tax money to the government, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So essentially, how federal regulation is laid, and based on which every province has, most of the provinces have their reframe their regulations, is either you can just reduce your emissions. That's the easiest way to go about it. Second, you can uh, purchase verified offsets, which have to be made in Canada. And it's a good way to go for made in Canada. Why they have this regulation, just so that they can have their country level reductions. Third is to buy some tradable offsets, such as emission performance credits, something like if an obligated entity has already reduced below the threshold given to them, they can trade that difference, and other company which cannot, due to whatever reasons, cannot are not in a position to reduce their emissions, can purchase those. So kind of a cap and trade uh, arrangement, which I think is available in Quebec. But you have got these operations valid and acceptable under federal regulations as well. And fourth option is that you can definitely pay per ton cost of it, which will go into innovation fund that's either available at provincial level based on the province that has the carbon regulation, or will go to federal level.
Okay, so either way, the money paid into it goes towards developing industry, is what I hear. It's not just an extra tax the way it's designed. Okay, and then we talked a bit about those offsets. So I guess one question: so there's Canadian offsets, and how do non-Canadian offsets fit in? Can you? I hear the regulation has you have to have Canadian offsets, but are you able to take advantage of non-Canadian offsets?
Absolutely. In fact, there are many companies which are doing that. Unfortunately, so far, non-Canadian offsets are not accepted as, if you're planning to comply to regulations and have some benefits out of that. That's not so far acceptable under regulations. However, there are several businesses, especially in retail and real estate, which have global presence, and they actually want to reduce their global emissions. So there is always an option of combining the offsets within Canada, or buying entirely international credits. And in order to be able to know that whether you're investing the money in is verified, there are always third party verifications available for these offsets or renewable energy certificates, that will assure that you are protected as a customer, as a consumer of this offset. When it says protected as a consumer, that means these offsets that you're purchasing are not duplicated or not sold to anyone else, and that plant is actually offsetting carbons. So there are third party certifications as well, such as gold standards, verified carbon standard, uh, Ecologo is very popular in Canada. So these are few of the options. Then there is a green e climate. These are all third party verifications that help you to know that what you're going to purchase is verified, valid, and is not duplicated.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I guess it's pretty easy to say we have these offsets for sale, but are they selling to multiple people, or like the example of this plantation of planting trees, and then a year later it just goes up in smokes, like we're seeing in a lot of places. So I
Yes,
imagine these.
yes, I was
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are some of the things that we've actually heard from some of our clients, and which are completely understandable because carbon offset market is still very unregulated but very popular, demanding, and is picking up a lot. And while the governments are trying to standardize the whole procedure of purchasing, procuring, and registering, there are there are certain cases wherein you are inclined towards afforestation kind of offset, and it turns out that it was just forest fire that just destroyed the whole plantation. So you just need to know that that's why these third party certifications have a role to play, which I said that they protect the your money in terms of where you are investing and make sure that what you are spending on is verified. There are sometimes that some says this, yes, we'll be planting some tree plantation project that never came up, yet you spent on that. So did you actually indirectly offset your emissions? So yes, third party certification has a major role to play, especially until the market gets standardized and beyond that as well.
Yeah, and imagine there's like all sorts of different offset. They're not all equal. And when it comes to offset, is there differences in prices, or are they pretty much the same price, or is there a variation out there?
There is going to be differences in prices. Three. There can be any reason behind that. It's not. It depends on what kind of a project is it, how much technology is involved in that. Another thing is which location it is at, how remote is it from your location where you want to actually offset your emissions, and which year. So the vintage of the offsets, which year it was offsetted, is also something that determines the price of these offsets.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I know in Canada the cost of carbon is going up over time. Now, right now, what's the cost of carbon right now within
It's
the
forty
system?
dollars per ton.
Okay, and where is that going in the future?
So they have increased it from $50 until 2022 to $170 in next 8 years, which means which was this carbon tax, which was increasing by $10 per ton each year, and which was supposedly going to be $50 next year on April 1, would be next year in 2023 would be touching 75, which is a way big amount, increasing $15 per ton.
Okay, so a big increase from what it was before. So it's going to be increasing, is it $15 or $20 a year until it reaches the
Until it
$170?
reaches $170 by 2030.
So you can see that there's the cost of using carbon technologies or technologies that create carbon is going to go up fairly dramatically. So having seen that, have you seen a big shift in the behavior of the industry, or basically your market you're in? Have you seen a big increase in people getting into the carbon market and looking to offset their carbon?
Yes, actually, the reason why they are not just trying to do well, like go for green options. Another reason why they want to go green is also the consumer base that is wanting to invest in those companies, in stocks of those companies where which are going green, which are taking sustainability initiatives. And there's immense study that's already available that says that is energy consumption is the biggest source of carbon offsets for any company, for carbon emissions for any company, whether it's retail, real estate, industries, anything. So yes, there is a lot of inquiry, and there is an internal push within the company to go green, to stay sustainable, become sustainable, and be in the market for long run. So the push is not just internally, but also the consumer base who's wanting to go for those companies and those choices which are choosing to go green or sustainable.
Okay, so a lot of consumer pressure, and on top of that, that financial pressure of that cost of doing nothing is going to go up. And I imagine too,
Yeah.
with the reduction in cost of solar and renewable energy, it's making it even more attractive to do the switch, I imagine.
Yeah, it's one of the easier way, especially when you're not when you're not complying to the regulations yet. You want to have some sustainable investments in your business. That's one of the ways that businesses are finding financially suitable for them for long run, because they're not just reducing their emissions, but they are also investing in those projects, therefore diversifying their portfolio of investments, which are actually clean energy projects. So you're doing an in-house favor as well as you are actually cutting the emissions.
And we've talked a little bit about the buyer opportunity of being able to offset your emissions. Now, what are the opportunities from someone that actually invests in technology and is able to go below the thresholds and maybe even capture some additional excess carbon? So, what's the opportunities for them to take advantage of this market and actually sell credits?
There's a lot of projects like this, and some of the information, because I'm in Alberta, so I've got more information of Alberta. But if you check carbon registry of Alberta, it actually lists out all the projects which are doing carbon offsets, which are producing carbon offset credits through such kind of projects. So be it capturing your waste heat, or hydrogen fuels, or biomethanation projects from landfills. These are some of the very innovative, very simple projects, but they're not letting the carbon release. And that is an additional value, additionality that they're bringing to the whole project. And that's why they're able to sell off the carbon credits for these. It's good that these projects are very innovative in a way, giving opportunities of not just innovations, but employment as well.
Okay, so we can see there's an advantage of going down that path, because then there's also another way to capitalize on it and just your basic market equations. So that's one
Yes.
advantage of
Yeah.
the current market. Okay.
Yeah.
And tell us what's the main customer you tend to work for? Like what's I guess your typical profile, or is it quite a range of different companies that you assist or work with?
Yeah. So, due to non-disclosure agreements, I cannot give you the specific details, but I can definitely assure you that every single day we are getting so many calls in terms of just to understand how they could actually offset their emissions, especially that's coming from their energy aspect. So, which is typically called scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. How they could offset that, what could be their options of purchasing green energy, or making an energy bank decision that makes their business more sustainable. And these inquiries and these requests are not just coming from any particular sector, but across the board, be it oil and gas, be it retail, grocers, wholesale markets, real estates. Everybody wants to go green, and because they know that there's no way to go back from this.
And would you say has it been just in the last year, or has it been the last 2 years that you've seen more interest, maybe a bit of more of a surge happening in this area?
Yeah, so the research has been quite constant in that way, but the whole idea of people becoming aware, the businesses becoming aware of what's happening in the market and in their own sectors, how people are making shifts, not 100% shift, but eventually and gradually diversifying their sources, is something that has just mobilized the whole thing. And this trend has been seen in last 3-4 years a lot. And with the announcement of increasing carbon tax from just $50 in 2022 to $170 in next 8 years, has been quite a driver in terms of people getting aware of these things, especially
Yeah.
in the Canadian market.
Yeah. And imagine, especially in the Canadian market, with the last Supreme Court case on that, really kind of like there's no more option. It's either you go this way or you go that way, right? You change your business, or you'll pay the cost. There's really no option at that point.
Yeah, I think in the long run, this is something that's helpful for us, because uh, I mean, there is much evidence available already that how glaciers are melting. And major source of any climate change has been through fossil fuels. So if you cannot completely remove fossil fuels, which I don't think so is going to happen in the next 50, 60 years, you can at least diversify your portfolio of energy production and consumption.
And then the role your company has is it's really because I hear there's a lot of different rules depending where you are. You've got different opportunities, so it can be a very confusing market, especially as everybody's just learning. Things are really developing. So, what role do you bring to a company that comes up to you, say, we need to go somewhere, we're not sure where. So what's usually the process you follow and what you provide to your customers?
So what we typically do is it's very important that solutions that we would like to provide to them actually matches companies' goals and interest as well as the budget. Our idea is to make them identify the areas where they want to reduce their emissions. That could be scope 1, scope 2, or scope 3. Just direct or indirect emissions, what areas they want to do that. And based on the company's interest and what they are looking for in terms of offsets, we provide them with options of Canadian and non-Canadian emissions reductions that can be in form of renewable energy certificates or carbon offset projects. So, and we make sure our USP here is that we make sure that what money they're spending, because it's not an easy money, it's going to be a good money, a decent money that's very important to be discussed. But making sure that that money is still reasonable for the amount that they are looking to offset, as well as is verified by a third party. It's very important because otherwise, it should be worth it completely. So finding those reasonable price points and with the verifications, that's our USP.
And what would you recommend a company that's starting this path? What would you recommend they look at or do to start with?
I would say that it's very important to first in-house just see what are the areas of interest in companies' goals. And if you see that energy is some area where you want to see the reductions, know how much you are consuming in form of natural gas or electricity or steam or any form of energy, how much you are consuming otherwise in traveling. And when I say traveling, it's like employee commutation. That can really get a little bit complicated. But in terms of energy, how much you're consuming directly and indirectly, once you have those estimated or rough numbers handy, we're here to help. We can tell you exactly how much can be met, can be offsetted through what's available in the market.
Okay, so it's really get to know the impact, kind of do the numbers, and I imagine there's a lot of like easy, low-hanging fruit of changing a couple behaviors to have some dramatic reductions, and then after that, it's the offsetting work that starts and finding out which credits or which ways to invest or what technology to shift into.
Yes, and we while we are doing this, we also make sure we are not just selling them just for the sake of it, just to make some business or anything, but we make sure that give them a background of the project that they are, what we are presenting to you, how it is actually offsetting carbon emissions and how it would be beneficial for your project. So providing a complete market information, project information, and the price that could back the price point, just so that they can make an informed business decision.
Yeah, so really here, your job is to really clarify, make that a little bit simpler, and be their advocate in the journey.
I know the field can be very complicated because it's very dynamic right now. It's evolving every single day in terms of the market requirements and in terms of regulations and policies. That's where our role also comes in, that we explain them what the market is typically performing and simplify those jargonish words for them so that they can better understand what they're getting into.
Well, thank you for being a guide into this new economy, and thank you for the time today to really guide us through some of these concepts. And very much appreciate it, and very good to see you again.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for this opportunity, and yeah, thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
To hear more about our podcasts, showcase events, or the Futureproof Network, please visit us at www.futureproof-network.com.